when I was hanging out with drag queens got special priority, and I was not old enough to get into bars. And I knew that if I dressed in drag, I could. Yep. And it just kind of happened. And then in New York, if you're interesting enough, everybody pushes you to be a drag queen as often as possible. I don't know. I'm pretty feminine. I mean, I can act like a guy sometimes, but a majority of the time, I'm either in drag or I'm cooking or cleaning, pretending like I'm a housewife.
That is a clip from a film called 50 Faggots. How gay do you want to be today? The film is premiering at the Mix Festival in New York City tonight, and you can watch it online in webisodes at 50faggots.com. It looks at the lives of effeminate, gay male, activist artists, educators, professionals, people in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York City. 2 years documenting the stories of 10 effeminate gay men. That's the first season. Really, this spans 5 years, this film. And Randall Jenson, director and producer, is in the studio with me right now, as well as Aaron Gray, a cast member. He's a designer for Tiger J LCC, a fashion corporation in New York City, and assisted in designing collections for Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, Carson Kressley, and couture designer Bradley Bayou. He's 19 years old as well.
27.
27. Oh, wait.
He can be 19.
At 19, you did something.
We're all 19.
I love that.
Now, where to begin talking about this, Randall? You decided you wanted to follow these men over a period of years. That's quite a commitment for a documentary.
Yeah, well, I think what sort of makes us stand out instantly is the fact that that it's an autoethnographic documentary series. So it's not actually a film; it's actually a series. So what we're premiering at Mix is our first webisode, which is an hour-based, and we call it a webisode sort of as a fun way to play with the word, web, because it is meant to be online and accessible to a variety of folks. And we've had such a great outreach so far with reaching queer people all across the country. We actually just came from Huntsville, Alabama, and St. Louis, Missouri, and we had a really successful launch in both cities. And we premiered and launched it in May in Chicago.
How did you come up with the idea? What made you say, okay, I want to follow effeminate gay men? And then, of course, why 50 Faggots?
Right. Well, I was actually taking a college class about 5 years ago called Deconstructing the Diva, taught by Missy Bradshaw at the time, who was at DePaul University. And it was a cross-listed women and gender studies and queer studies course. And so I decided to take it as any sort of, I think, fabulous gay man would, because it was a series about, studying Maria Callas and Barbara Streisand. And our final project was to be
And you're not out of school that long. You're 27 years old.
26.
26, okay.
Yeah.
So this is your first project, really?
Well, it didn't even start. I mean, it started as a final project, and for the final project, the job was to do a paper or some sort of project on a diva. And of course, the biggest diva I knew was actually a cast member and my best friend Aaron Gray. And so we decided to
who's sort of 19,
who can be 19 at times. Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah. So I decided to follow him, and so I did sort of this impromptu interview, and it turned out to be really fabulous. And through that, I mean, we were just having discussions that I feel like most gay men have with their friends, right? You talk about your identities, you talk about your perspectives on community, you talk about if you're too effeminate or not, right? Because there's a lot of censoring, a lot of policing that happens within our gay male communities. And I think part of that is looking at, like I said, communities. I'm very intentional about talking about us being pluralistic and about us being, having all sorts of identities. And sometimes we mesh and sometimes we don't. But I think the beauty of 50 Faggots, since we've been launched in May, is having this dialogue with one another. And that was something I was really committed to, because I was an activist long before I was doing 50 Faggots.
Yes, you come to this as an activist. You've appeared on Oprah talking about LGBT youth.
Yeah, I was on the Oprah show. I was on a clip of the Oprah show. I was actually a speaker at the National ACLU membership conference in Washington, D.C. in 2003. And that's actually how I met Timur.
Yes.
We met
Hello,
in
everybody.
D.C. Yeah, so I mean, I had a commitment to queer youth activism, specifically working with homeless, at-risk, and street youth, and working with the juvenile justice system long before doing 50 Faggots. So I think that what informs also the project is coming from this very social justice framework, this feminist framework, and also looking at the way that language is used.
And we've been talking a lot about language
I've heard, yeah.
today. And let's talk about this now and then move on to the film, because I know a lot of people are thinking, why the name faggots, a word that a lot of people find offensive.
They love it. I mean, that's the other thing. People also love it.
Yeah.
So
talk about that.
Yeah. So I feel like, well, you know, part of it is, I've said this over and over. 50 Faggots is a series. While my editor is also a queer woman, and she's been certainly monumental in making it, Meredith Silke, 50 Faggots is a series that's to, for, and about gay men. Right, so it's a series that's addressing gay male communities. If other people watch it, which they have, and thank you, it's great. But it's not meant to be a series intentionally that's, you know, teaching straight people necessarily. You know, I think that a lot of things out there right now in queer reality series is geared towards a straight audience, is geared, you know, we're sort of cultural assistants, whether we're fashion designers or whether we're promoters or whether, you know, we're constantly teaching people how to have etiquette in some way. And I feel like 50 Faggots is not about that. I mean, it's meant really to have this dialogue with gay men because we often don't do a very good job at talking with one another.
And so what do you think of this word tranny? The word tranny used in Glee, and then GLAAD criticized them.
Well, I think it's very hypocritical of GLAAD because I actually was at their annual, not their annual, I was at a summer event that they had, and they actually sent a list out to all of their VIPs telling people that these are the lists of words that you should and shouldn't use. But it wasn't just words, it was actually agendas. So it was sort of like, talk about gay marriage, you know, these are the issues that we need to push, right? Or sort of don't use tranny. Certainly faggot wasn't on there. And I was attending at the time with someone who was on RuPaul's Drag Race. And so, you know, the joke was, you know, I'm here with, you know, this great...
And RuPaul uses the word all the time. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also, you know, let's talk about Glee. Glee's very first episode had the very first moment we have in Glee is a pedophilic music teacher who gets kicked out of school for molesting, you know, students, right? GLAAD wasn't there for that. So, but like that, and if that's not an image that's like, you know, historical. So I'm wondering what agenda is really sort of worth pushing at
and
times.
they put out this statement, which brings me back to your film, because people can argue about, well, maybe Glee shouldn't be doing that in that context, right? But you're talking about people calling themselves something, and they literally criticized me on the Joy Behar show last night. And here's the quote. They say, gay activist Michelangelo Signorile defended the use of the word, quote, if you're calling yourself or your friend that. Now, they don't think you should call yourself or your friend a tranny if your friend calls himself a tranny.
I think...
this gets back to you with this word. If somebody calls themselves a faggot...
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, what I'm doing is, what we're all doing is everyone in the cast members are self-identified as effeminate. That's key. It's not me going around saying, wow, you are so gay, like you need to be in this series. They have to claim it for themselves.
You don't need to say it.
I don't have to say it. You can hear his voice right now. No. but like, you know, I think that, you know, you know, and the thing is, we're using the word faggots, right, because this is what gay men are calling each other. And it's actually sometimes not a positive thing. It's about who are the gay men in our community that when they walk into a bar, when they walk into a restaurant, a social venue, whatever, they teach at school, that other gay men say, he's too gay. That's a faggot. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be associated with that, right? Because we're in this culture that's so hyper-masculine. It's pushing for us to be so normalized. And it's like, how dare you? You know, like, I'm going to claim every piece of myself. And I think the beauty of it is that you see the cast claiming every piece of themselves.
We own our faggotry.
Yeah.
You asked that question. And that's in the title. How gay do you want to be today? Because you're saying, you know, these are people who are very, very gay and sort of criticized for being too gay.
Absolutely. I think, and I think what you'll see is that for different men, their effeminacy comes maybe from maybe for some it comes from what they wear, what they dress like. For others, maybe it comes from a more internalized feeling of how they actually think about themselves. And that's sort of the beauty of following these actually 12 men in New York, D.C., and Chicago for over 2.5 years. So we have footage, you know, we have over 500 hours of footage which is absurd.
Oh, I thought it was 5 years, but no.
Well, it started in 2005.
Okay.
So if if people come to Mix tonight, they can see in the first webisode that the very first moment that Aaron and I did with this home video camera is actually what starts off the very first moment of the first episode. And then we go to the present of looking at these different folks.